Good morning, y'all, y buenos dias. So today I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit and make a little bit of a different video. Today I wanted to talk about whether or not anyone could be zero waste. This video is going to have a bunch of different topics all kind of meshed into one, so it will be kind of tangenty and all over the place. But if you guys are interested in this, then keep on watching. So, can anyone be zero waste? In short, no. In not so short, kinda, maybe. So there are so many different levels when it comes to being zero waste, right? Zero waste in the sense that you are trying your hardest to create the least amount of waste. And there's so much going on with the term zero waste that a lot of people are terrified of it, and mostly because it sets you up for failure, right? Zero waste, like you create zero waste, but that's impossible because we don't live in a circular economy, right? We live in a linear economy where we create, we use, and then we toss away. And so, in short, no one can be zero waste because we don't live in a world where all of our needs can be met in a circular way. And so by doing this, obviously at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to try to make the least amount of damage on our planet. And that is something that we need to take very seriously, and I try to take as seriously as possible. And what I do now is so much better than what I was doing, let's say, a year ago or 2 years ago, and definitely, 5 years ago. And so we have to constantly be bettering ourselves, but at the same time, we have to know what is realistic. And so, for example, even here, like where I live, there's no recycling. That sounds kind of wild, but yeah, no recycling. And so what we do is we just collect everything that we have and kind of store it up for when we go into the city and we go drop our recycling there. But for a lot of people, that's not possible. They can't do that. And so there's an example right there, like that person can't recycle because they live in a location where the closest recycling center is an hour away and maybe they don't have a vehicle. And so there's that. Or, for example, bulk shopping. I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but yeah, bulk shopping. Not everyone has access to bulk stores in their area, and they might not have transportation methods to get to the nearest bulk store. So that's another one. Or just finances, Sometimes unpackaged products can be more expensive than the more convenient disposable item, so financially someone may not be able to spend the same amount of money as someone who is capable to create less waste. You get what I'm saying? And it's super disheartening sometimes when we see people who are trying, yet they feel like they aren't doing good enough, right? But the reality of it is that none of us are doing the most that we could possibly do. Like in a perfect world, it would be just that. It would be perfect, and we would have access and available resources and all of these things. And so what we have to do is just do the best that we can in the situation that we're in with the resources that we have available, and all of that encompassed into one. For example, there are people who live in areas where even fresh produce is super scarce, living in these areas where, the nearest grocery store, and I'm talking, fresh produce like, food is not available. And so obviously that person is not going to be zero waste. It's not going to happen. And so what we have to do is think about it on that level. And I know that we're only doing what we can, but we also have to think in the bigger picture, right? We have to think of what can we do to change it from that aspect, from accessibility, from those points of view, right? Because yeah, I don't use straws and I don't use bags and stuff like that, but we also need to be thinking about, why can't this person have the same access to, let's say, like a bulk food store or fresh produce. So as we're making changes for ourselves, we have to start thinking about changes that we can make as a whole for our community. And that's what makes it awesome. You know, like that's what's going to make it happen, like that next level of change. That's how that's going to happen. And that happens all the time with social media, when we unite and we create these fundamental changes that propel us into better. And so what I'm really hoping to do, I live in an extremely rural area, surrounded by cows all the time. And so what I really want to do is make like a local gardening club, because we have a lot of fertile soil around here, and there are a lot of people who live below the poverty line in my area. And so I would love to start something like a gardening area that we can get a lot of the schools in the area involved. There's only like a couple schools, so I feel like we would be able to have something like that would work really well. But yeah, you know, like just to try to think of things outside of our own circle. And that can be really difficult sometimes and really challenging, but I mean, everything that is worth it is really challenging. And so I have to do that for myself. You know, all of this time I had been thinking about, you know, the steps that I need to take. And obviously you always have to be focused on that. You always have to be focusing on what you're doing to do better. And like I said, you know, we cut out bags, we cut out plastic, disposable plastics, and you know, further and further we're getting better. And now my challenge for myself is to try to see what kind of fundamental changes I can help push forward in my community, in my society, to make less waste as a whole, to make whole foods accessible to everyone, not just me, not just my neighbor, but everyone. You know, on so many levels that needs to happen, obviously on the waste side, but also just like on the basics, like on the human basics side. And so told y'all this video was going to be super like non-whatever, but yeah, that's the bottom line, is that yes, we can all do better. All of us, you know, like if you go to the store and you get a drink, just be like, no straw please, you know, like little steps like that, or carry a fork around in your book sack, you know, stuff like that. But fundamentally, not everyone can be zero waste. You know, it just can't happen because we don't live in that world yet, hopefully yet, you know. And what we have to do is sit down and talk about what is wrong and find those solutions and figure out what we can do to make it better. Because if not, we're always stuck in the same loop, and that can be really difficult for the people who are on the outside of that. I'm extremely lucky and privileged to have access to everything that I have access to, you know, a vehicle, funds to be able to go and buy the things that I need to buy, all of those things. And so we need to think critically about those problems and figure out solutions to those problems. As a community, like I said, those are the things that are really going to change drastically and fundamentally create our better world, so that everyone can be zero waste and, you know, have access to all of the fresh produce that we need. And so yeah, kind of really random video, but I really wanted to talk about that because we had so much of these conversations on Instagram, and people ask me questions about this all the time too. And so people feel guilty because they're not like the aesthetic zero waste, right? Like they don't have a bunch of pretty mason jars with all of their bulk stuff. But it's like, if you don't have access to that, there's nothing wrong with you and what you're doing. You just need to do you know, you need to do what you can do and then push forward to make that change for everybody else too. But yeah, this video was super random and I apologize for that. But I think that that message seriously needs to be talked about, as far as can anyone be zero waste and what everyone thinks is zero waste, you know. I'm going to put a couple of links to some really awesome sites that help make like little changes to make everything a little bit more plastic free and to make a little bit less trash. B0 is my favorite site ever. Be Zero Girl on Instagram. I'm gonna add her down below as well. An incredible inspiration to me and to a lot of people in the zero waste movement. But yeah, I'll add a bunch of links down below. Sorry that this video was really random. Tlazocamahti for watching, and I will talk to y'all later.